In my work as an executive search professional in e-commerce, I have a lot of conversations with people that I wish I had recorded. And in this instance, I managed to hit record in the nick of time. This episode of Mar Talks is an edited version of a conversation that I had with Joshua Hudson of Pivotree, who kindly gave us permission for it to be published. And the sound quality isn't perfect, but the content's too good not to share. Josh works as the Informatica Practice Director at Pivotree, which is a trailblazing e-commerce agency that focuses on composable e-commerce development and deployment. And they were previously featured on Mar Talks last year when we spoke to their VP of Engineering, Joel Farquhar. Here, Josh is sharing his perspectives on brands' changing requirements around data and data management and the solutions they're using and the factors determining the success of vendors in the space. For further insight on this topic, you can always go to the Rosenstein Group webpage and our blog to read an article based on this conversation. But in the article, I make the case that allowing brands the greatest possible freedom and control of their data is now a major competitive factor for a solutions vendor, and that a culture of open collaboration is now critical for vendors and agencies alike. But for now, over to Josh. I started this conversation by asking Josh how the brands he's working with are compensating for the absence of data stack in their solutions and how they use modern microservice e-commerce platforms.
Oh, that is the $1 million question, isn't it? So most of the companies, most of the people that we work with, and I've been doing master data specifically for about 7, 8 years now. I started 20 years ago as kind of a web developer, went into ERP development, went into supply chain system development, always worked on the software side of things. And the more we tried to develop technology, the more we realized we weren't really solving all the problems. we were trading one piece of technical debt for another. And so I wasn't interested in Band-Aid solutions, so I kept digging deeper and deeper. And there were a few people that I keep coming in contact with throughout my career who kind of saw things in a similar way. So we wanted to dig deeper and deeper and deeper and solve the real problems. And ultimately that led to solving business problems. But with the business problems and the technology, somewhere in the middle is the data. So every time we kept running into a problem that we couldn't fix on the development side of things, we realized, the data's bad, so it's not our problem. Wash your hands and go away. And I kept thinking, what if we solve that problem? What would that take, right? And that led me kind of down the path and ultimately into master data management. But most of the companies that we work with, they all seemingly have very similar goals in mind. They want their data all in one place so that they can kind of see it and they can touch it and they can feel it and they can do all the things they need to do with it. They want it to be accessible. They want it to be good quality. And they think in a lot of ways, at least in years past, that the technology, just putting it in one place that was going to solve the problem, we'll take it from here. And what we're finding more and more and more is that they're realizing that they're not solving their business problems. They're not really looking at their business process. They're not really looking at how they're organized. They're not really looking at how they're structured. They're not really looking at their overall architecture. And that's one of the things that we try to come in and help them with, right? We're data evangelists, right? We kind of see ourselves as master data. I'm sorry, we see ourselves as management consultants first, who happen to know a lot about data. Oh, and we can figure out how to take one of these technologies over here. And we implement 4 here at Pivotree, 4 different data solutions. And we can take that knowledge and learn the intricacies of a particular platform and, plug it in, make it do what the client needs to do. But if they don't really know what they're doing in the first place, or they think they do, and then you get into a project and you get into a program of work and you find out over a period of time that the things that they thought were true weren't really true. And then we have to, somehow try to find a way to make that work. That's ultimately what we see nowadays, is that you'll have a company come in and maybe they want to do a standard lift and shift. Let's take all of the data out of all of the different places that we have within the company and just put it in this one place. Okay, great. We did that. What problems did we solve? Well, now you're not having to go and look in all these different places, but now you have all of this data put together and it doesn't really make sense. So now we got to go talk to those people. What is the data that they were managing? How were they managing it? Why were they having some of the issues that they were having, pulling all that stuff together and collating it? So that's kind of the stuff that, and this is one of the things that I really liked about your article with Joel, is that we never really have seen ourselves as system integrators, as system implementers. We really see ourselves as business problem solvers using data. And then the implementation of the solution is kind of one way we get our foot in the door.
Companies that are manufacturing their own products, and they really have to have a lot more of a journey around those products to bring them online, and having something that effectively manages that they can also share out to their supply chain or their supply chain org is critical.
Yeah, the early adopters, interestingly, to PIM were retailers, right? Because they were getting products from a lot of different sources, and they really had to pull it all together. So, they were really early adopters. Like, okay, we've got to get our stuff. We got to get our business organized. So, how do we do that? So, they're pulling all this information in from all the manufacturers, and the manufacturers are historically terrible at managing their data because they just want to make the product and they want to ship it out. And we'll let you deal with it. Maybe they'll help out in some marketing jargon, stats or logistics or use some other things. Some dimensional data. But they, other than that, they don't. Here, it's your product now. You go figure out how to sell it. And then in that chain, then from the retailers, the distributors started saying, okay, we need to start acting like the retailers did. And now we're finally getting to the point where manufacturers really want to get that data in front of the client themselves. They don't want to have to rely on third party, right? They want to be direct to consumer. And so it's that change. It's seeing what the retailers were able to do with their not so great data, and turn it into something that made them realize, oh wow, if we took control of that, if we owned that, we could sell these things direct to consumers as well, and kind of cut out the middleman and reap the benefits.
Certainly, one of the areas that, in particular, composable has been great at addressing, because manufacturers traditionally had gone through distributors or retailers in order to get their product in front of customers. And now that they're able to have the content that they're producing, and they want to maintain their brand image, they want to have uniformity across all of the channels, one of the best ways to do that is to have that direct to consumer channel. How many examples of that have you come across in your work?
The direct to consumer model?
Yeah.
Oh, that's about 75% of what we do now. We started down this path probably 4 or 5 years ago, where it really started to kick off. And we felt like, a few of us were kind of at the forefront, like, we're breaking new ground here. We're doing things that other people haven't done. There wasn't a whole lot of experience with it. So we were just jumping in and saying, hey, let's figure this out. And because of that experience, we were able to learn a lot. It wasn't always pretty. It wasn't always smooth. But that's how you learn.
What's one of your favorite examples of enabling a manufacturer to go direct to consumer?
We had a bicycle manufacturer that was dealing with a lot of dealers. Very similar to the automobile model, right? So you have automobile manufacturers, and they have all of these dealers that are geographically located, and they've got to deal with. I mean, think about the number of different stakeholders that you have in the automobile industry with all of the different dealers. It was pretty much the same thing with bicycle manufacturers, right? You've got all of these local bicycle shops that you've got to deal with, all these mom and pops all over the place. And just from a business standpoint, how complex that is. So you find a lot of these large, multi-billion-dollar bicycle manufacturing companies out there that are starting to go quite a bit more direct to consumer, or they're trying to go out there and they're trying to find, they're trying to buy out the mom and pops and create kind of corporate stores. I think, and I can say this name because we're not working with them, but Trek is doing that, right? You find Trek buying up all the local stores. They're trying to cut out that complexity, and they're trying to simplify things. But for this one bicycle manufacturer, they had their data scattered all over the place. We worked really closely with them, and this really was more of a data management consulting initiative than it was an implementation. And we really took that to heart. We really took to heart that they were trying to break new ground here. They were trying to get to they were trying to develop direct to consumer pathways for them to be able to execute on that. But so what we did see in terms of, as soon as we went live, as soon as we got all this together, and it wasn't easy. There were some bumpy roads. There were some things, the client knew, and some of the things that the client didn't know about how they're organized and how they manage data internally and the systems that are involved. They didn't really know all of that until we dug in. But as we uncovered, the more we realized, okay, here's where we can streamline, and we put some thought leadership behind that. And once we got everything implemented, once we got everything aggregated, once we got everything, working seamlessly in kind of that data supply chain, if you will, then once they had that and they felt confident about it, and they felt confident that they could share all of that detailed data around all the complexities around, a particular bicycle or a particular part, they were able to work out deals with organizations out there like Competitive Cyclists, which are large, kind of an e-commerce, marketplace for all things cycling. And then they launched their first ever direct consumer model here, I think about 6 months ago. And so it's a large, player in this particular space that has, taken that initiative, taken that, that data management shift within their organization and turned it into a whole new strategic business model. So to me, that's a success story right there. And we do have a few others with a few other manufacturers where we've done similar things, but this is the one that, as soon as we went live, a month later, they announced big initiatives that were directly correlated to the work that we were doing.
That's an outstanding example. I mean, what do you think it was that they were able to realize with the new data solution that drove their direct-to-consumer development?
Well, honestly, it was technical debt related to technical monoliths, right? They were working with the Oracles and the large companies out there to kind of run their entire business, which historically don't really manage, ironically enough, you struggle to manage the data as a business process, right? The data down to the individual business level, right? The functional part of it. And when you're able to, draw on a big old giant whiteboard, and I've got 30 hours of video of me drawing on big old whiteboards out in California, of just being able to show, okay, so where does your data journey start, right? So we're trying to get to a data supply chain, right? So you start from the very beginning of, where data starts, how to, from a product standpoint. Where does that product begin? Is it an idea? Okay, once you have the idea, where are you writing it down? Oh, I'm writing it down in a piece of paper, or I'm putting it into a spreadsheet. How about we capture it right then and there, right? And then we can change it, and we can maneuver it, and we can do different things with it. So, a lot of times that starts in a PLM, a product lifecycle management system. And then you take that and you go, okay, so now that you have this, now that you have something that you've formulated, maybe it's based on an old product, maybe it's something completely new. But once you start to put some organization around that, once you start to put some real detailed value, data value around that, how do we capture that? Where do we capture that? Why are we capturing it now? What percentage of these things actually turn into something that we're ultimately going to utilize? Those kind of decisions have to be made. So once they got to see that big picture, and they got to see that every step of the way, they could make a change within their organization, not just from a technology standpoint, but they could make a change in how they're managing that data, and how they're organizing that data, and how they're increasing the quality and increasing the availability of that data. They felt, okay, now we have control. Now we can turn things on and off. Now we can switch things up. Now we have the ability to see the whole picture. And that really was the catalyst. And they were hoping to get there. They had that vision. They thought if they really went about this in the right way, that they could get there. And they did. Ultimately, it was excellent leadership on the part of the client, to be perfectly frank. And they kept pushing, they kept asking questions, they kept pushing harder and pushing harder. And not just on us, on their own teams as well. So that to me was that was the catalyst. That was the thing that allowed them to do what they ultimately wanted to do.
Well, what I'm getting from this is that it sounds like you have the perfect scenario for consultative leadership. You've got interchange with the leaders that are controlling the data, that are controlling the solution stacks, that are collaborating internally, and then you're driving the process from a technical discovery perspective and to address the problem versus they have absolutely no idea where they want to go, where you're having to completely reformulate how they're managing their data, how they're structuring their data, what solutions they're using, because the old model, again, it's very siloed. It goes from, you mentioned product lifecycle management. It's the data's in product lifecycle management. How does it make it into the supply chain system? Well, that's a separate set of data. How does that make it into our procurement system? How does that make it into the merchandising system? How does that make it into the content management system? And traditionally, those were all separate data stacks. And you ended up with, that order management becomes a matter of its own.
Yes, and we've actually taken that model with a running shoe manufacturer, with a snowboard manufacturer, and with a few others that have similar models, right? They do all the design and everything, and they rely on other parties to kind of actually make the products that they're making. But really, their focus has to be on the information around that product. How do we present that product to the marketplace so that people want to buy it without having to go into a store and pick it up and physically hold it? Right. And it's bridging that gap and having having that vision and that foresight for the bicycling manufacturer that it basically it kind of trickled down. When people started hearing about some of the things we were doing with them, they wanted to talk to them as well as us to find out what they were doing and how they were doing it. So it became, kind of a word of mouth, kind of a referral type business. But now, the work that I'm doing in Informatica, with Informatica, yeah, we're doing a little bit with some similar manufacturers, but we're also leading into medical device manufacturing because there are a couple of players there that are trying to, not do the exact same model because they're a very different type of business, very different marketplace that they're playing in, but they're trying to reap some of the same benefits that some of these other people have seen.
Well, in life science manufacturing, you have a lot of distributed manufacturing as well, particularly if you're dealing with microprocessors or high-tech components where you're sourcing from all over the world in order to make your finished good that you're selling as a large business, particularly Siemens. I look at that global supply chain and oh my gosh, it's complex. Well, let me ask you this. I'm very interested in this, Joshua. You've been extremely generous with your time here, but if I could, given what you've seen Pivotree dealing with, because Pivotree is an old commerce player for a long time, started out with Hybris. So if I could get you to weigh in on comparing the monoliths versus the composable solutions that are coming online, the commerce tools and the like, and which if you could compare and contrast how easy it is for the clients to make this unified data happen.
Yeah, so the monoliths, in some degree, they want to control everything themselves, right? They want to have all of their own people. Now they'll bring in the consultants, and they're really good at working with consultants. But they really want to come in, and they tend to want to control things. They tend to want to say, all right, this is how we're going to do it, and they tend to dictate. When it comes to the types of clients that you're working with the like you were saying, the composable solutions, the ones that you can just kind of plug and play. The ones that are maybe on a they're cloud native on a subscription model, so you don't really have all of that massive technical debt that you're bringing with you. Those types of clients really are looking for a little bit more thought leadership. They're looking for people who can come in and say, hey, take a look at our organization, take a look at our people, take a look at our processes, take a look at what we've got in place. Where do you think we should be making changes to kind of streamline? Because we realize that our data keeps hitting roadblocks. Our data keeps hitting funnels. Our data throughput isn't where it needs to be. So you kind of look at it from a supply chain perspective, if you will. So they're looking for people to say, hey, how have other companies that you've worked with, because you have this experience, how have they organized around this? And again, that's when you get into more of a traditional data governance, strategic data governance initiative. And you say, okay, at an organizational perspective, here's your data governance council. Here's how you put things into play. Here's how you make decisions around data. So if you're gonna change this attribute, or if you're gonna change the characteristics of this attribute, here's the process that you really need to go through to make sure that you're not causing problems downstream that are really going to mess things up. So here's how you organize yourself around that. Now, once you have that, let's put all your data into one place. Now, once you have your data in one place, let's make sure that we understand how to get that data from where it originates, whether it's customer data. Again, we're not just doing product information here, but whether it's it's the customer data, how that relates to the product data, and how that relates ultimately to the supplier data, so you can get that real, what we like to say is almost a four-dimensional view. So those kind of companies tend to be a little more accepting of our help, right? They tend to be a little bit more accepting of, hey, they're a little bit more honest with themselves. If I'm being perfectly honest here, they're able to say, look, we know what our core capability is. We know what our strengths are. This isn't one of them. Can you help us out? We're not going to tell you how to run your entire business, but from a data perspective, here's how I think we can help. And here are some of the examples that we've seen where this can benefit you in the long term. Ultimately, our goal in the data space is about alleviating technical debt, right? We're not here to implement systems just to trade one piece of technical debt for another. We really are trying to resolve this. And if we can resolve this at the people level, if we can resolve it at the process level, then the technology is ultimately going to help take care of itself. And we'll even go in with clients and say, look, we implement 4 different solutions, but we've implemented more, based on everything that we're seeing here and everything that you want to do. Here's ultimately who you would suggest. So the tool selection part of it. So again, we really like to dig into more than just, what does it take to turn some wrenches and some bolts and implement a solution? Because if we can do more than that, if we can provide that value, then ultimately when they have new initiatives, when they have things that they're thinking about, they'll come to us and say, hey, what do you think? And if we can help, we will. If we can't, we'll recommend something else.
That's outstanding. I've certainly seen that there are companies that are very constrained based on their tech stack, and those typically are the monoliths, where you just have folks that are, I'd have to say, risk averse because they've made such an immense investment in their technical debt. And those companies are kind of they're handcuffed. It's very difficult for them to make any transition. And those companies that have opened their eyes to what composability can bring to them in terms of freedom to choose how they first build their stack, but also, most importantly, to engage an expert outside of the organization that has learned from numerous other examples of how to do this effectively, efficiently, and they can use that expertise if they adopt composability.
You were talking about the monoliths and how they're just risk averse in terms of making any kind of changes, because they have the experience where they changed one little thing in their system, and all of a sudden it broke so many things downstream that they're like, okay, I don't want to be that guy that gets that gets called up in front of the firing squad anymore. But at the same time, they'll still look for outside help. But again, the big monoliths, they tend to think that the only people that can provide help are the $1 million consulting firms, right? The McKinseys, the Deloittes, the Accentures, and they'll come in and they'll give you a really great presentation. But how much of it is executable? How much of it can you actually realize? How much are you actually getting for your money? Where we like to say, this information, it's not that hard. You can be a little bit more direct. Of course, you have to build that rapport and everything. You can be a little bit more direct. You have that opportunity to really, see business value in very short chunks, and you're not building things from a theoretical perspective. You're building things that can be executed. You're building things where you can see that ROI pretty quickly. It's a bit more of an agile approach. So the monoliths will still, try to, they'll have their report sitting in their desk drawer once upon a time, or sitting on a shared file system now somewhere. And they'll say, oh yeah, we did this thing and we spent millions of dollars on this report. Let's pull it up. And how much of it ultimately do we find is useful? A lot of times we'll take bits and pieces and say, okay, here are your headlines, here are your bullet points. What they're saying about them might be right, but what value are you getting from that? Is this something you didn't already know? And we'll take those bullet points. We'll say, those bullet points, we've come across them. Those bullet points we've seen. We've gotten to know you, intimately as an organization. Here's how we think we can help you execute on that.
I love your partnering approach. I love your partnering approach. I mean, it's refreshing, and at the same time, I hit my head sometimes. I go, why aren't more organizations aligned that way? How do we solve the problem? How do we get the value? How do we get the real?
It's not easy. Yeah, it's not easy. It takes a lot of experience. It takes a lot of bumping your own head to get there.
I'm a huge fan of Pivotree. You guys have just really done so many things that I was not aware of within Composable. And in meeting Joel, I kind of got a flavor of that. It's like you have so many experts within various tech stacks. You've got 4 different products that you're using for data, and you've got an expert for each.
So Pivotree has been in the data management business for around 4 years, right? Because they did the hosting and they did the implementation, and it was ThinkWrap, and it was Tenzing, and it was SparkRed, and they all kind of came together. And then a year later, they created a name called Pivotree. Right about the time they launched the name Pivotree, myself and a few others in our GM, Derek Court, came on board. So we were bootstrapping, a data management practice where we had, we'd been doing this for a while, and we had the partnerships and we had the relationships, and we knew enough people in the space, and we were bringing some clients with us. So they kind of acquired their data management practice through just hiring a few of us, kind of individually. And so I was the MDM practice director. So I was leading all of these different platforms and working with all of those clients and going out and trying to find that talent, going out and trying to find those people who knew that technology, but also knew how to solve business problems, right? Solve the business problem first, the technology comes second. Solve the business problem first, and the technology you can learn. You can find people who are able to work with multiple platforms at the same time, right? Who are kind of Swiss Army knives. Because if you take care of that part first, then you're not beholden to your technology partner. Mm-hmm. So I got to know all of the technologies, all the technology partners intimately that we worked with. A lot of the stuff, we were at Informatica World, and I was just blown away back in May. Everything that they're doing is heading in the right direction, but they're technology experts, and they need partners like us. And if we can put that together, man, the sky's the limit.
Fantastic. Well, that's that's wonderful, because they're one of the few companies that truly has really embraced moving to the cloud. Obviously, their solutions, they haven't developed a cloud native database solution yet, but the SaaSification of their on-prem product from a database perspective is fine, because it's a database.
Yeah.
You can have a database in the cloud. It doesn't have 3 million interconnecting modules. Okay, we need something to translate the data. Okay, we need something to normalize the data. We need something to check the quality of the data. We need something to govern the data. Those are separate modules. Those can be put in the cloud. So you're a big fan of that. They must obviously have a great capability in terms of analyzing unstructured data.
They do. The analyzing of the unstructured data isn't a core competency of ours yet, right?
Okay.
It's something we work with clients on it. We can get the data to the lakes and the warehouses and stuff like that, because that's something that Informatica is really good at. But it's not ultimately. So we haven't employed data scientists in the past. We do have some data architects, but they focused more on data quality, right? Making sure that all of the attributes are filled out exactly as they should be, across an entire product line. But that is kind of the last piece to building out our data management BU that we need to dig into, and it is that data science. It is that data, working with that unstructured data and trying to figure out a way to make sense of that. So, admittedly, it's something that's that and the analytics side of it. That's something I earned a degree in, and I would love to dig into that, and I'd love to be there. But right now, our core competency isn't quite there. We've got our eye on it. We're open to opportunities, and if somebody wants to give us that opportunity, we will absolutely take it and run with it, and they will benefit from that greatly. But we're getting there. When it comes to the cloud native solution, so Informatica launched IDMC, which is their cloud native solution. So when it comes to master data management, they grew through acquisition, like a lot of big companies do.
Yeah.
So you have Hyperion on the customer domain side and kind of the multi-domain. You have they acquired Hirler, which was kind of on the product side, and those were always two separate different things. And what we've learned over the years is that those are two career paths. Hey, I know Informatica. Okay, which one do you know? I multi-domain. Okay, great. You're gonna know P360. Nope, don't want to touch. It literally was two different siloed things, and you would think, wow, how is that possible? These are so similar.
They're two sides of the same coin.
But it was really siloed. And what they're doing with the cloud native is they're trying to take that functionality, but they're replatforming everything into IDMC. They're probably a little ways away, but some of the stuff that we're already implementing, some of the customer domain cloud native stuff with IDMC. We're already implementing some of the integration stuff with IACS. We see the light at the end of the tunnel here. They've just launched product 360, customer 360, supplier 360, all these different modules. What is it? Reference 360, business 360, that are working on the same platform, that are not relying on some of this old coding technology, right? They're moving toward low code, no code. So that stuff, we see the future. I can pull it up right now and I can play with it. It's not quite there yet to the level of some of our other customers would like, but they know that, they acknowledge that, and they're moving in that direction. But they also know that they've got a big migration project that's coming, because they've got thousands of customers. I don't know how many it is that they're going to have to migrate to these new platforms. So that in and of itself is going to be a whole new thing. So we've got our eyes very closely on that as well. But they're getting there, and they're replatforming. Coincidentally, Riversend did that 3 or 4 years ago, where they completely replatformed for the cloud.
Yeah.
And they took a massive gamble there. And we were working really closely. I live here in Houston. I live about 20 minutes away from Riversend's office. Yeah. So when we were doing projects with Riversend, I'd just show up, to their office, and get to speak with their CEO, Upen. You just walk past me and strike up a conversation. So we got to see, but we also got to see all the growing pains that went along with that, and we were at the forefront of that as much as we could be. We knew it was the right thing. We knew it was going to be a hard thing, but we knew it was going to be the right thing. Yeah. Informatica is going through that, although they're not going to feel the pain nearly as much, because they have a lot more money they can throw at it. Yeah. So. The real brave ones were the Riversends of the world that really led the way, that showed the way for everybody else. But again, Informatica is the only one out there that's really following that lead. I can't say the same about anybody else.
Thanks for listening to Mar Talks. Please leave a review and a rating on your platform of choice.
We're available on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, and all major podcast platforms. To find out more about how the Rosenstein Group can help you find the right leaders for your client development teams in MarTech and e-commerce, please visit our website, rosensteingroup.com.